It's been a month. The last time we learned Tanya was Gimel Menachem. The following Sunday was Tisha B'Av, then it was visiting day, and then it was vacation. We haven't learned Tanya in 5 weeks actually. Yeah? Gimel Menachem now is what? Ches Elul. And we're learning Perek Tes, Rabbi said. We're learning Perek Tes, okay? So let me review a little bit what we learned. And then when Hashem's up, we'll continue, okay? Perek Tes is the beginning of a new piece of the Tanya. And again, I heard this from people much older and wiser than I am, that in the olden days there were certain mashpiyim who, when they would start teaching Tanya to young Bachrim, they would start with Perek Tes, not from the beginning. And it actually makes a lot of sense. The idea was that in the first 8 prokim, the Alter Rebbe was proposing what is the Akdama to the Tanya, the prelude to the Tanya, the preface to the Tanya. What's Nefesh Lekis is Perek Beis Gimel Dalet Hey. What's Nefesh Abamis is Perek Vav Zayin Ches, and of course a little bit at the end of Perek Aleph. And Perek Tes follows that. After there was an elaborate, a very detailed proposal what Nefesh Lekis is, after there was a very elaborate proposal what Nefesh Abahamis is, it comes to Perek Tes. Like I told you last time, we learned that the visual for Perek Tes would be a gigantic page in the New York Times, a gigantic page in the New York Times, and across the entire page, top to bottom, it says war, W-A-R, 3 letters, war. That's how it was in December 7th, 1941. That's what this Perek is, war, Mulchama. After you explain Nefesh Lekis and Nefesh Bahamis, you explain their meaning. Perek Tes is the Mulchama between the Nefesh Lekis and the Nefesh Bahamis. What's going to happen is this: Yud is going to be Tzaddik, Yudalef is going to be Rosh, Yud is going to be Beit. Tes sets the stage. Tes describes the Mulchama between the Nefesh Lekis and the Nefesh Bahamis. The way the Alter Rebbe proposed it to us, we already had one shiur. We learned one shtickle. But one shtickle is that each of the two, the Nefesh Lekis and Nefesh Bahamis, have a strong house, have a place in the guf. The Nefesh Lekis is in the moyach, in the mind and the brain, and the chol ha'yimani shebalev. And the Nefesh Bahamis is in the leiv, in the heart, specifically in the chol ha'smali, in the left ventricle of the heart, ha'molei dam, which is filled with blood. This is the locations where they begin. And they fight. The Nefesh Lekis wants to spill over from where he is or she is in the mind and the right ventricle to take over the whole person. And the Nefesh Bahamis wants the exact same thing in the reverse. She wants to go from the leiv to the mind and that takes mispashat b'chol haguf kulei. Each one wants to take over the whole person. Now, in the previous shiur, one of the notable points was that the Rebbe talked about Nefesh Lekis being in the moyach, Nefesh Lekis is in the brain, and it spills over into the lev. And he gave 2 examples of midas shebalev, 2 examples of emotions. The first was ahava karish beyesh, that when it comes from the mind to the heart, one loves. Ahava karish beyesh means fire, love like fire attached to a coal. In other words, it's connected to a source. So it has a concentration of heat. And the second thing, it's one of my favorite few lines in Tanya. What is the midah for Tiferes? The midah for Tiferes is simcha. That's what he said. The midah for Tiferes is simcha. When a person is far away, the midah for Tiferes is rachamim. But when a person has the midah for Tiferes is simcha, it's the only place in Tanya where you have this. I have seen this only in one Ma'amer Chassidus, besides for the Tanya. It's such an unusual insight. Because usually we always know that Tiferes is Kav Emtsoy, it combines Chesed and Gevura, but we usually associate with distance and Rachmanis. The Holy Geras HaTshuva speaks about Rachmanis, Perek Memei speaks about Rachmanis. In this Perek, he talks about Simcha. That the central pole is that when you don't only have a relationship with the Eibishter based on closeness or fear of distance, but you have this takol b'yikara de malka. You actually achieve a level where you have a connection to Hashem, like as if you could see Him. There's a simcha. That's midas hatefes. This is what we learned in the last shir. Let's continue inside. We're on top of Daf Yudal Amud Aleph, which means page 27. I'm a few lines from the top. You know, No. One line from the bottom of your Gimel Amud Beis. I apologize. One line from the bottom of page 26. Very last line on page 26. Yes? However, it says in the Pasuk, it's like a nation fighting a nation. Lo'i means l'uma, people. Lo'i means one people. Lo'i means another people. Yematz. They exert themselves. They're pushing themselves on one another. To say this in the most direct way and with the least amount of political correctness, the Nef Shalakis and the Nef Shabahamis, they don't know anything about ceasefires, you understand? They don't know anything about negotiated peace. They don't know anything about settlements. They know one thing, unconditional surrender. They fight till the end. That's the title, Mileim Yematz. Each one wants to win and wants to win totally. And he explains it. Ki haguf nikra ir ktana, because the human body is like a small city. Ukamay, for example, Sheshnei Malachim, if you have two kings, Nilchamim alir achas, are waging a battle over a city. So the Rebbe says they're not going to split the city in half. Shekol echad reitze, each one wants lekavsha v'lim lechalet, to conquer it, and the king over it. The hanig, in other words, lahanig yoshveha, to direct, to govern, to lead its inhabitants, to say nay according to his will. V'sheyiyu sorim limashmat toy, they should turn to his discipline, to his order. V'chol asher yigzeh aleim, and all decrees. There's no 50-50. There's no 90-10. There's no 99-1. It's 100%. So the Rebbe says, kach. Just like when you're fighting over a city, you're not going to settle. You're going to win or lose. You're going to fight till the end. So the Rebbe says the same is true in Avodas Adam. Shtei hanefashos, the two souls. Halikis v'achayunis abamis, the divine soul and the soul of life, which is the animal soul. And I've told this to you a number of times before. Nefesh hachayunis means the soul that gives you life. By a tzaddik gomor, his nefesh hachayunis is his nefesh halakis. By a tzaddik gomor, his nefesh hachayunis is his nefesh halakis. By other people, by a benyamin for sure, and maybe even by a tzaddik v'ralei, his nefesh hachayunis is his nefesh habamis. So the word chiyunis and bahamis are not synonyms. They're a little bit different. Bahamis, we know what behema means. We have a whole class on behema years ago. But chiyunis means the one that gives life to my body. And for the ordinary person, this says in Tanya Perikov, that's in the beginning, the nefesh habahamis is his chayis, is his reality. Shemei klipa, which comes from klipa, nilchomei zu imzu. They're fighting a war with one another, ala guf v'chol over the body and all of the limbs of the body, all the organs of the body. And again, the key point, it's a simple point, it's not complicated at all. The key point is that there's no compromises. Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Habahamis, I always say to you, they were created before the United Nations. There's no settling, there's no compromising, there's winning and losing. And he spells it out. Okay? Shalakis Cheftzoretsena, the godly soul desires and wants. Shetehi Lavana, that she alone should be. Hameshelis alone, dominating over the body. Umanegasi, and governing the whole body. All the limbs of the person should be turning to her discipline. And bottle to the godly soul altogether. There should be a chariot for her, for the godly soul. And act as a garment to the 10 faculties of the godly soul alone. Gimel levusheha hanal. Now the 3 garments which we discussed earlier in Perek Beis, and Gimel and Dalet and Hey, sheyislabshu kula, that all of the garments and faculties of the godly soul should be revealed. Ve'evrei haguf, and the limbs of the body. Ve'yihya haguf kule, that the body should be Mole mehem, filled with them. Them means the esek koichas of Nefesh Elokis and the gimel levushim of the Nefesh Elokis. V'leyavev zor b'teicham chas v'shalom. And a stranger shouldn't pass through them, God forbid. That the godly soul wants to win completely. I just want to share something with you. I saw it this morning when I was preparing. It's not that important, but I'm going to share it with you nevertheless. It's a diuk. I've been teaching Tanya for close to 30 years, and I never taught this. I never was medayek this, because I don't like to add unnecessary nukudis that could take away from the Ikeh Inyan. I'm just going to mention it to you that the Rebbe Rashab has a maimed. If you look inside, it says, I don't know how many lines in the top. 9 lines in the top. It says, you see, the line begins with the word merkava and levush. So the Rebbe Rashab talks about the difference between these two words, and he explains it pashat b'pashtus. Yeah, a person wears clothes and he sits in a car. There's a very big difference between the clothing that a person wears and the car that a person sits in. Why? Because clothing are midei vad. Clothing are measured specifically for each person. A merkava, a chariot, a car, a house, a vehicle that carries a person can carry many people at one time. So it's not so precise and so close. So the Rebbe Rashab says that the neshama comes into the guf. And he wants that the guf should be a levush and a merkava. He uses the word merkava first and then levush. So the Rebbe Rashab says merkava is chitzonius and levush is pnimius. You understand? Levush is a deeper connection, because levush means a garment that fits. So the levush is an inyan pnimi, how the neshama should be revealed in the thought, speech, and action of the body. Then the thought, the garment of thought, and the garment of speech, and the garment of action of the neshama should be beslapshus in the guf. Merkava has to do with the body itself, with chitzonius. So he makes a distinction between the word merkava and the word levush. Levush is a deeper idea, merkava is a more external idea. But the basic point is that the neshama wants to take over the body completely, inside, as the word levush connotes, and outside, as the word merkava connotes. And then he says, and nobody else should be involved. The Abba means the neshama doesn't want to settle on sharing. Okay? Now I'm going to be bad today. Okay? I want to skip. Turn the page. Turn the page. I want to show you. Look at the last 2 lines of this page. You're dialed on the base, page 28. Yeah? The last 2 lines of the page. Yeah? However, nefesh habamis shemei klipa, the animal soul which comes from klipa, retzeinu lehepach mamish, wants the opposite of what I just said, mamish. The Alter Rebbe spends a page and a half, a whole amud and a half, explaining how the nefesh elokis wants to dominate the person, and the essence of what he says are those 3 words. There's no compromise. Nefesh elokis want to take over the guf on the inside and on the outside in all aspects, and he doesn't want to share. Says the Alter Rebbe at the end of the page, one line. That's it. One line. This is called equal time. You understand? We live in America. In America, there's political elections, and it has to be fair. So if you are a news outlet or whatever it is, and you give a half an hour to one candidate, then you automatically have to give half an hour to every candidate because of equal time. So the Alter Rebbe in Nebuch, he doesn't know the rules of equal time. The Nefesh elokis, he gave a page and a half, and the Nefesh Bahamis, he gave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. It's 7 words. That's the equal time, you understand? The Alter Rebbe said, you'll figure it out yourself. Unfortunately, you don't have to read about it in a book, you can read about it in your heart, yeah? But the Toichen of Peirik Tes is to present to you this there's a war. And each one has to win completely. That's the way this works. The Alter Rebbe spends a very long time with the Nefesh elokis. 1 line of the Nefesh Bahamis, and by the way, the next line he already says, L'teva Sodom. She is Gaber Allah. You see how he finishes the Peirik? That this that the Nefesh Bahamis fights against is so that you should overcome him and win him. So we'll get to that in Mitzvah Hashem when we get to the end of the Peirik. But I wanted to establish now the nature of the milchama between the nefesh halakis and the nefesh habamis, that each one has taken over the person completely, and there's no room for pshara. Okay? I think that was clear, yes? Let's go back now. Let's go back to what we're holding. The Hainu. You see the Hainu? I'm going back to where we were holding. It's 11 lines to the top of Daf Yudal Amid Beis. The Amid Aleph, that means page 27. The Hainu, this means at the end of the line. This that the Neshama, the Nefesh Halakis, wants to dominate the person completely means the Tlas Meichin Shaberosh. The three, in other words, he breaks it down. The Alter Rebbe goes into details of how the Nefesh Halakis wants to take over the Guf completely. So he starts like this. Tlas Meichin Shaberosh, the three intellectual tools which are in the brain. Yiyom should be filled Mechabad, with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, Shebenefesh Halakis, which is only from the godly soul. Shehi, and this is Chochmas Havaye Ubinos, the wisdom of the Eibishter, Kvayachol, and understanding of the Eibishter, which means to engage in trying to have a deep connection with Hashem through our understanding. Leizbeinen Bigdulase, to contemplate the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Asher Adein Cheker V'Yiseif, which is beyond search and beyond limit. Ulehelid Mehen, and to birth, to give, to create, through the combination of Chochma Bina. Chochma Bina were called in Perek Gimel of Tanya, Abba Ve'ima, a father and a mother. So when you have a father and a mother, you have children. But Das, the Chochma and the Bina alone can't make this happen. The Chochma and Bina can effectuate this if they include also Das, that there should be emotions. So the Chochma and Bina can understand the Lakus, right? Chochma is the intuitive mind. Chochma is the creative mind. Chochma is the part of the brain that comes up with new ideas and abstract ideas and fine ideas. Bina is the part of the brain that chops everything up into pieces to make sure it's precise and correct and accurate and so forth and so on. This combination of being intuitive and creative, plus being thorough and precise and analytical, that Chochma and Bina, together with Das, create emotions towards the Eibishter which have legitimacy, says the Rebbe, first of all, Hayira B'moich, awe in the brain. Second of all, Upachad Avaya B'libe, fear of Hashem in the heart. Yira and Pachad are both Gvura. But Yira is a deep emotion, and Pachad is a loud emotion. So he says Yira is associated with Moyak. I had this in other places in Tanya as well. Even though Yira is an emotion, it says Yira b'moicha. My brother was a shliach. He's always looking for words to speak to secular people. So he uses the word respect. For Yira b'moicha, he uses the word respect. There should be a sense of the ehrenskeit, the earnestness of Elokus. I think it's a pretty good translation for beginners. Pachad is an actual fear. So Yira has a depth, Pachad has a pronouncement, but the Alter Rebbe speaks first Yira, then Ahava, for whatever reasons, and then he continues, V'avas Hashem, and in addition to the Yira and the Pachad, there should also be a love, Avas Havai, a love for the Meibishten, Ke'esh Be'ela, like a burning fire, Belibi in one's heart, Ke'erish Be'esh Al Heves, like flames attached to a coal. The word that Rish Be'ez in Tanakh, Rish Pe'ha, Rishpei Eish shall have this Yudke. So it says in Tereh, the word Rishpei means koilin, red hot coals. In other words, when you have fire, fire can be easy come, easy go. You strike a match, you burn a piece of paper, you have fire, but it's gone. There's no heat. The concentration and the endurance of a fire is not how big it is, but how hot it is. And the heat is not in the flames, the heat is in the coal. So Rish Special Harvest means the flames attached to a coal. Lehiyois, that effect. In other words, when you have this Yira, you have this Pach, and then you have an Ava with an intensity which is called Rish Bayesh. It will affect Nichsefa. Nichsefa means a want, a desire, a love. Begam Kolso, to the point of Kaleis HaNefesh, Nafshi of one's Neshama, Bechasheka v'chafetz, with a longing and a desire. L'dovka be'ein seif baruch hu, to become attached with the ein seif, v'cholei, v'nefesh u'ma'et. Right? B'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, or b'chol meidecha. These are three different levels. That this love, which is so powerful, that is called Rishpei Eish, should be b'chol levavecha. What's the meaning of b'chol levavecha? B'shnei yitzerecha, the right side of the heart and the left side of the heart. B'chol nafshecha means it's not only in the right side of the heart and the left side of the heart, it's afilu neitelas nafshecha, it's in the whole body. And b'chol meidecha means the love is not only in my heart and not only in my body, it's in my wealth. B'chol meidecha, that the love is felt not just in the heart and in the body, but in everything that belongs to this person. Me'umka deliver from the depths of one's heart, sheb'chol ha'yemoni, it begins in the right ventricle of the heart. But then it's going to spill over to the left ventricle, as you see momentarily. I'm reading on. Please look inside. Yeah? That the right ventricle of the heart, which is the seat of the nefesh elokis, should be rotzuf, should be totally engaged. Rotzuf means coated with this love. Malay, full. V'goda should overflow. What's overflowing? Asher tispashet gam. It should expand also. It should radiate as well. Gam l'chol small to the left ventricle of the heart. In other words, the love should not only be in the neshama, it should come also the nefesh habamis. The animal soul should also love Hashem. La'chafya l'sitra achara, to bend klipa. And he specifically mentions Yesed hamayim aron. We know that there's 4 evil elements. Here the Rebbe speaks of water. Why water? Because shehi ha-taiva. Because taivas, desires, weakness, lust, comes from Yesed hamayim, shemeklipas nega, from the klipa of nega, l'shanesa, to change her, la'afachot, to transform her, mitanugi elam hazeh, from the pleasures of this world, la'avas Hashem, to a love for a Kodesh Baruch Hu. As it says, b'chol levavecha, and here the Rebbe teaches, b'shnei yitzerech, not just in the nefesh elokis, but in the nefesh elokis as well as in the nefesh habahamis. Okay, now listen, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read in Daish. It's a long piece. Next Sunday I'll go back and I'll show you the nuances that are here. But the Bible, we're going to learn and translate. V'hainu, this means, sheyali, you should rise up, v'yavain, you should come, v'yagian, you should reach or touch. First, the love starts in one place, in the nefesh elokis. Then it spills over from the nefesh elokis into the nefesh habamis. Then it spills over from the nefesh habamis into the guf. And then from to the guf into everything that the person possesses. So the Rebbe now spells it out in madregas. The madregas avarab, like from a love which is called the rishpei eish, which is a lower level, a love which is compared to fire. It should become avarab, that means an infinite love. The chiba yased on an extra chiba, the love. Mi madregas ava aza kirishpei eish, which is even higher than a love that has the intensity of rishpei eish. Rishpei eish means fire attached to coals. So the Rebbe says, you start off on one level, which is ava kirishpei eish. You move on to a second level, which he calls ava karaba, rabba, and then he says v'yanikaz b'kosav ava b'tanugim. It's called the pasuk ava b'tanugim. Now ava b'tanugim is really a third level. That's how this works. There's ava kirishpei eish, there's ava rabba, and there's ava b'tanugim. But the way it's described in this pedic is it starts off in the nefesh elokis, it spills over to the nefesh habahamis, and then it takes over the nefesh habahamis. That's really these 3 steps of ava kirishpei eish, ava rabba, and ava b'tanugim. Lis anig al Hashem, to have a pleasure from alakus, me'ed el mabah, which is like el mabah. V'ha'edeg hu, and the delight it is, I am 2 lines from the bottom of the page. B'meya chochma b'seichel, in the brain, which is associated with chochma, hamisanet, that has delight. B'haskolas Hashem, the translation, the word haskola means in creating new sensitivities towards understanding Elokus, the Yossi and knowing Elokus, according to the reach of one seichel and chochma. V'hu, and this is bechinas hamayim, the level of water. I'm going to explain all this next time. I'm going to go back over this and I'll explain this all. V'zera eir zarua, and seeds of light that are seeded. Turn the page. Shebekdushas nefesh elokis, which starts off in the holiness of the godly soul. Hamahapeches letoiv, that transforms into good. As bechinas hamayim, the level of water. Shebenefesh habahamis, which is in the animal soul. Shemehem, from whom ba'u came. Taivis tanugi el mazeh mitchila, the desires for pleasures of this world in the beginning, and when a person is holding by agav tanugim, he makes that the nefesh habahamis should have a tainug in elikus. It says in Kabbalah that in a chara nepach le'estev gomon, the evil is transformed to be absolutely good. In other words, the mayim of the nefesh habahamis, the water of the animal soul, which is a bal taiva, should become the mayim of the nefesh elokis, which is also a bal taiva. But it's a taiva felakus, k'mei yetzatev mamish, like the yetzatev mamish. This happens when one removes the garments that are unclean from himself. Which are the pleasures of this world, which a person may have been involved with before. And you transform them into a tainak falakus, the mayim of the nefesh habahamis becomes one with the mayim of the nefesh halakis. Now the Rebbe continues, it's not only true of Ahav, it's true of all of the other midas. Shehem anfei hayira v'ahava, the branches of fear and love, yiyu lahavaya lavade, should be for the Eibishter alone. V'cholkei chadiva shavepeh, the power to speak with the mouth. V'amachshava shavamech, and the power to think with the mind. Yiyu memulaim, should be filled. Min levusha amachshava v'adiva, with the garments of thought and speech. Shall nefesh halakis levad, of the godly soul alone. Shehein, which is machsheves havaya v'teirasim. Think about the Eibishter, and think about his Torah. Liyei seichosei kol hayem. All a person talks about all day long is a lukus. Like pasuk from begin, he never stops to speak the Torah. So they never puts machshava and dibur together. Thought and speech is Torah. And then he concludes v'keach ha'ma'asi shabiyadayim, the power of action. This is Bogomilsky. This is diktuk, 2 yuds. With the hands, ushar abach ev, and the rest of the limbs of the person's body, you should be b'maisa mitzvahs levad, the action of the mitzvahs alone. Shu, and this is levush hashlishi shel nefesh elokis, the third garment of the godly soul. I just read a lot, but on a simple level, what we learned is very simple. What we learned is that the nefesh elokis wants to take over the person totally. So he talks you through it, right? Brain, heart, thought, speech, action. That's what we just did. That the nefesh elokis is mind. The nefesh elokis should fill the mind. Chochmah bina das. The nefesh elokis should fill the heart. Chesed, Gevura, and the other midas. And then it should come down into thought, speech, and action. On a simple level, that's what we just read. Okay? Then of course that line, the next line, which I showed you in the beginning, Ach nefesh habahamis shabakli, but it's in what I just described, says the Alter. That the nefesh elokis wants that the brain and the heart and the thought and speech and action should be filled with nefesh elokis alone. The nefesh wants exactly the same thing, backwards. Okay, but there's a lot of words here. Alter Rebbe doesn't spend a page and a half saying something which you could have said in 2 lines or 3 lines. There's a lot of nuance, a lot of diuk. And we're going to go back over this next week. I'm going to leave you with a thought. I want to leave you with a thought. We can philosophize all day long. Philosophieren is a kleinekuns. To be smart and blow wind is gonish. It's not life. I mean, some people think that's all there is to life, and it's a rachmanis on them. And part of the rachmanis is that they don't know it's a rachmanis. What matters is avodah. What matters is work, life. When I prepared this morning's class, I listened to the class from last time. I listened here and there. At the end of the class, I told you the Ma'aseh with the Rogatchover. It's a story which I can tell 1,000 times and never get bored. The Ma'aseh with the Rogatchover. That he came to the Tzaddik HaKoyim Lublin. And he was trying to argue with him in Lomdus. And Tzaddik HaKoyim wouldn't argue. And he said to him, Junger man, ich bin einmal euch gewesen, als wie du, gefahren über die Welt und gewissen, dass keiner kann nicht leben. Aber es ist nicht kein Derech. Geht ihr für sich erleben, solle der Reuslevet nach verdienen der Baby. I think this story, the whole Chassidus, is in this story for Balei Meile. You know, Noshim Pshutim have a lot of this story, everything you need to know about great people, and Chassidus is in this story. He says, young man, I also was like you. I knew him more than I was smarter than the whole world. I'm a genius. I'm a great mind. I went around and I showed everybody but me I'm an And he didn't say it wasn't true. He said, that's a life. That's not life. Geh, you find sich a Rebbe. Find yourself a Rebbe. Zoller die Reis lernen from Davdin in the Meibishter. Let him teach you how to serve the Meibishter. It's a whole nother thing. Avodas Hashem is totally separate from Askola, from Moyach. The Ikir is Avodas Hashem. And Avodas Hashem has a very, very important first point. If you want to talk about, no, you don't want to talk ideas. We're talking about life, we're talking about reality. That's the first point. Forgive me for bringing it up. Yetzer Hara. In the world of ideas, there's no Yetzer Hara. Fakat, the world of ideas is itself a Yetzer Hara. If you're talking about life, if you don't talk about Yetzer Hara, you're not being honest. So the shayla is, how do you approach the Yetzer Hara? So as a rule, first you have to put the Yetzer Hara in its place. And then the neshama can shine. If you know the Seder HaTfilah, the way davening works, every morning, you start with Meidani, you're talking to the Yetzer Hara first. When you get to the second bracha of Kirishma, when you get the Kirishma itself, and especially when you get to Shmoneh Esrei, the Yetzer Hara has been so pummeled, the Yetzer Hara has been so tzeklapt, that the neshama can emerge. That's the Seder of Tfilah. So usually the way a Yid engages with the Yetzer Hara is, first you deal with the Yetzer Hara, and after you've quieted him, or really, you've excited him about the Eibush, and then he's become quiet about his Nadishkeit, the neshama can emerge. Then you go on to neshama. In this Peirik test, you have something very, very, very unusual. In this Peirik test, what the Rebbe does, he starts with the neshama. He starts with the neshama. He starts with the neshama, and he goes over from the nefesh l'kis, and then from the nefesh l'kis, it spills over into the nefesh. It's unusual. What's written here in this Peirik, I believe that the next Sunday we'll be able to talk about it with Aklal HaKopim, Hashem. It goes from the neshama to the nefesh.